which, okay. What time is it? Am I late? No, 7:02. Okay. I think we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 7 committee members and 1 alternate. All right. Oh, you're wiping your screen.
Dick, this is GB. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the question is, am I voting or non-voting tonight?
Not at the moment because Chuck is coming in. Okay, so that gives us 7 committee members, all 7 regular.
Okay. Got it.
You are here, Chuck, right?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
had to go
Suzanne,
look for my agenda too, so
1,
I
2,
guess
3,
you'll provide it for us.
4,
So
5, 6, 7,
okay, I'm back.
8. We have 8 people. There are 7 on the committee and 1 alternate. I think everyone's here except John Kumpler, right?
Right.
Who's an alternate. So you can, of course, participate as always. And I'd like to welcome Rebecca Eldridge. Hello, Rebecca.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Our usual rules are that we certainly welcome guests to participate in the conversation, like the committee members. So feel free to jump in on anything. You can't vote on approval of the minutes or to adjourn. Other than that, welcome. That's usually the only vote we take. And our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Has everyone seen and read them? Any
Yes.
comments on any of them? Okay, do we have a motion on the minutes?
I move to
I move
approve.
it.
This is Carol.
Okay, Carol moved, and is there a second?
I
Robert.
second.
Robert seconds. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Supposed to do a roll,
Yeah.
we have to do a roll call vote because this is a remote meeting. So
Okay.
on my
Aye.
side, Carol is first.
Okay.
Carol? Dick Elkin, aye. Robert?
Aye.
Lily?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Right, the things are pretty random because I'm calling you as you appear on my screen, which switches from time to time and vote to vote. But other than adjourning,
Dick, I have a question.
Yeah.
I believe that, as a point of order, you need to read that preamble at the beginning of the Zoom meetings.
okay, this meeting will be held virtually via the Zoom video conference in accordance with the temporary suspension and enhancement of the open meeting law requirements by Government Baker. Instruction for a Zoom conference are below, etc. Well, you've all gotten here, so I assume you know how to get here. Again, the rules we tend to do are anyone who participates in the meeting, who comes, I welcome, unless somebody objects, to participate in discussions. And the phone numbers are here. Hey, my email is dick@elkin.email. That's interesting. I wonder how people got that. Okay. I like the suspension and enhancement. I added the enhancement to the states thing and everyone just copied it. Which shows you how much original thought went into that notice. Sounded plausible at the time. When I first submitted it, I was going to put it in parentheses, question mark, but then I figured they notice it. So the and enhancement, all the town committees are now doing it. And I certainly feel that this is an enhancement, and I hope we allow remote voting, remote attendance in some form after this is all over, because people are away some of the time. Okay, so now we've done the minutes. The next item on the agenda is the climate action listening. Did anyone besides Lily and I attend any of those? No.
What?
Was that the session on Monday? No,
It was, yeah.
on Friday?
Yes, that's right. Yes, on this committee, Carol and Robert, you were,
Robert and I were there.
yeah. Right, I went to all four of them, so I don't, well, most of,
I wanted to hear what everybody was saying throughout the Cape. And I also attended one today on the natural resources, since if the Cape
The
Cod,
stakeholder meeting.
yeah, the stakeholder meeting. Yeah, because I am the Wellfleet's representative to the Cape Cod National Seashore Advisory Commission, if that ever gets up and running. Now it's, so I did attend the natural resources subcommittee or stakeholder committee meeting today. Dick, were you on the transportation subcommittee today?
no, I'm afraid I was zoomed out after last week.
A lot
I could, but going to be.
A lot of hours, that was for sure.
Can somebody give those of us who weren't able to attend a kind of summary or update?
Yeah, it was formulaic. They did a standard presentation and they covered what they're doing from their viewpoint, which said that it was heavy on adaptation.
Yeah.
And on mitigation, they talked about the fact that they're doing an inventory, I think they mentioned they did that. Mostly on mitigation, they're doing an inventory. I can't think of what else they did in mitigation.
They did.
I think we made a point there that a regional mitigation inventory is a good idea, but it doesn't replace also having local inventories.
Right. And
Because
that
strategy,
go on.
sorry,
Yeah,
strategies in any local area will depend, more specifically on their needs and their abilities. So it shouldn't be lumped together as just, Barnstable County.
yes, that's right. And I had made that point when they first presented it to the Cape Cod Commission, and that they got it, at least the other commissioners did, but they didn't change their view graphs. What they did repeat again, and this is a question for us, that this is a new look, that when they talked about mitigation, they talked about the amount of energy that's consumed by people on the Cape and the amount of energy that's consumed by people producing the goods that we use on the Cape. And I had never thought about that goods, the energy that goes into the goods we use was something you need to worry about, because that leads you to the fact that if you reduce greenhouse gases, you have to reduce consumption, rather reduce the energy that goes in production. They call it production and consumption, and you have to reduce the energy that's used to produce the goods we consume. So I went to a carbon footprint website and tried to enter my personal information to see what my personal contribution from each of those was. And the website only wanted to know three things. How many miles did I drive? How much heating oil did I use in my home? And how many airline miles did I fly? And it didn't ask for anything else. The implication is that website is designed so that the rest of it is trivial. But there are about 5 carbon footprint websites, and I haven't tried more than just the one. I got burnt out after that. So we should consider whether or not it's significant or not. Whether or not the amount of carbon footprint that comes from the materials we produce, the materials that are produced, like you drive the car, how much carbon does the car represent? You put up a solar panel on your house, how much carbon does the solar panel represent? That's probably going to take some serious research to know. People have done it, we can't do it qualitatively. Has anyone seen any information about that? No, because my theory is what the second part was that in the production part, which is the amount we actually use on the Cape, 50% and 45% were in transportation and home heating, home and building heating and cooling, which said that 95% of the energy is in those two categories. And if that's true, then those are the two categories you need to focus on, to the exclusion of everything else, at least for a while, till those are well defined and on their way to being solved. Because if you can solve 95% of the problem, the remaining 5% is covered by the sequestration on the Cape, which is 8 or 9%. That is, the commission said that 8 or 9, the Cape sequesters an amount of carbon dioxide equal to 8 or 9% of its consumption. So that if you add the amount we consume plus the amount we sequester, we're below net zero with just three things, worrying about three things: transportation, heating, and cooling in your house and business, and the fact that you preserve green space. And that solves the problem, assuming that, the production of goods is insignificant and the other stuff amounts to 2 or 3%. So, my feeling is always focus on the big stuff and don't sweat the small stuff, because you'll spend more energy worrying about the 1 or 2% and not enough energy worrying about the things with a high payoff. So that's what I took away from the meeting.
They just completed that greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and today they said that, of course, they want to refine it. So they have some concrete goals that they're going to be pursuing to refine it. And also they had this map of the various charging stations and a plan for the future as far as EV charging stations, as far as the mitigation is concerned. And they have done a lot of work on adaptation. Dick, you are right about that.
So I think they're doing a very good job on adaptation.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And
That's what they know how to do, and they do it well.
And as we both heard, when we talk about the towns, and I did go to each one of the towns, I mean, as the Assembly of Delegates, presumably I'll be elected again, being the only person on the ballot, but,
one vote. Yeah.
people have to vote on this. So I do want to follow it and be informed as an Assembly delegate. So that is the focus. The biggest priorities for the towns are in the areas of adaptation. And they are concerned about mitigation, of course, but their priorities, for the most part, have mostly been on the adaptation side.
Well, remember, this whole climate change initiative, public hearings were put in because some people said, yes, you do adaptation, but its mitigation is totally not in the RPP. And they asked that the Cape Cod Commission modify the regional policy plan to include mitigation. So that's why I'm focusing on mitigation. It's a gap analysis. The gap is in mitigation. The gap isn't in adaptation. I give them full credit because they know how to do adaptation.
Well, they in the regional policy plan and developing it, they did have a series of meetings and over 2 years, and they do have language in the regional policy plan on mitigation. Yes, 350.org and you as well, Dick, signed a petition, and they are responding to that. But they have been doing things on mitigation as well, and now they're stepping up their game.
They're moving in the right direction, and the quantitative numbers, I've just stated the same numbers, 4 meetings in a row, 5 meetings in a row, it's getting through, and then the next meeting, they're going to talk about goals, so we'll see. But
Also, too, don't forget that, they've been addressing what the town's priorities have been as well. And they have always had this plan to create a climate action plan, which, and do this greenhouse gas emissions inventory, the EV car inventory, for the charging stations. They have this on their plan, and
But
they're follow. So I guess the bottom line is that they are really drilling down now. They are listening to the towns, they're listening to stakeholders, and they're listening to the broader public.
could I get to say something, Lily?
Of course.
what?
It's easiest to sell adaptation. It sounds to everybody like something that will help them. And that's always been, an easy sale in respect to getting people to support it. Mitigation always has implications about, constraints, and it's much more difficult to get people to, do it, and it becomes a much more political issue about how you do it. So, that's why it's really a challenge, because ultimately we can do as much adaptation if we want to. If we don't do any mitigation, it's all going to overwhelm whatever adaptation we do. And that's very sad that people can't see that.
But
I
we
agree with you, Bob. Part of the problem is the process is the questions, they ask 2 questions. And the first question is, and first of all, they invited town administrators who may or may not have gotten in touch with their energy committees. In about 12 of the 15 towns, they didn't, or 10 of the 15 towns, they didn't, including our town. So, but the question they asked was, what are your priority actions? Well, the obvious answer is adaptation, especially if you're talking to town administrators. It's not what are your long-term goals for solving the greenhouse gas emission problem. If you ask that question, you get a different answer from what are your priority actions to be taken. So there's a built-in bias, but I think we got a sense of what happened at the meeting. They're getting the responses that they set themselves up to get, and they're worthwhile doing. And I was surprised actually how much mitigation was brought up in the other towns, especially in the results from Barnstable and in Brewster, that people brought it up, even though the questions just didn't lend yourself to coming up with that answer.
They were open-ended, Dick. I was in those meetings, and they were open-ended. But I would disagree with this trend of thought, because I think the people in Wellfleet are very educated and they want to do things as far as mitigation is concerned. And
Yep.
The programs that we've had, with this, with our committee, where the first Solarize project, there were like 135 businesses that put up solar panels. That's in a town that, has like 1,000, something over 1,000 homes. That was pretty impressive, I think. And then the second Solarize round, there was there was an uptake as well. So, and that's not the only, those aren't the only ways that people are putting solar panels on their house. I think that people want to do
I
something.
agree with you. I think that people, especially the people who are aware of this, are conscious of it. I just think that, well, okay, we agree on that. In Wellfleet, that's true. We did that. We did the Outer Cape Energize. And are we going to talk about that? Is that on the review later? Joint actions with other energy committees. Let's put that off till we talk about community outreach program, Outer Cape Energize. That's an agenda item, because I think David wants to talk about that. Right, David?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so that's coming up later. Okay, so one of the other things that is involved is the local comprehensive plan. When I called Maria Broadbent to tell her about the meeting, I also told her that we are working on a local comprehensive plan, something she was not aware of. Now, Carol has been talking to her about the vulnerability plan, right? Which tends to be,
Correct.
so right now, the state of play is that she's new and she hasn't thought at all or even been aware at all that the town is responsible for doing both of these plans, right? And
Dick?
I think sooner or later, especially if we keep bugging her, work will resume on those plans. I don't think anybody has done anything on either of them in the last year or two. Carol?
I did check with Suzanne Thomas, who's in charge of the update to the local comprehensive plan or the
Yep.
long-term comprehensive plan.
Local comprehensive.
And she said she was just about to put out a message to her committee to tell them she was planning on getting people together in November to review drafts of each person has a section or one or two that they're assigned. So that is gearing up to resume. And there is a draft that I have to find again of the energy section that was done maybe 18 months ago.
Right.
And I did mention it in committee. I hope I sent it out.
Please look again,
So-
because I would like to work on that before our next meeting.
Okay,
For all of
okay.
us.
I will pick it up for Suzanne. I'll send it out to the committee.
Right. Now, at the time we did that, we blithely adopted a goal that we should be net zero by 2030 for lack of any other numbers. So we did a formal vote on that. I think that perhaps we should reconsider and do the more realistic goals that I've been saying that's in line with the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is 50% of 1990 levels by 2030, 75% by 2040, and 100% below 1990 levels or net zero by 2050. I think those are the numbers that were in the legislation that was separately passed by the House and Senate. They disagreed on a lot of things, but they agreed on those numbers. The governor has already said the state is committed to zero by 2050, so it doesn't take legislation for that. The Global Warming Solutions Act said 80% or below by 2050, but the governor did a finding it should be 100% below by 2050.
But Dick, I have a problem with that, and that is the IPCC reports comparing what would it take to stay below 1.5 versus 2.0 ended up with a set of scenarios, all of which predicate that after 2050, we figure out how to extract that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
Right.
In other words, none of them really completely work unless there's a solution to that problem.
Right.
Because you have to get that junk out of the atmosphere in addition to doing that. So I know why you're saying that is our quote, are we being realistic about what we can accomplish? But on some level, what we can accomplish is a function of the political commitment to really doing something.
Well, I agree.
Do I agree with you?
I-
I don't think we're going to make it.
I agree with you, Bob, but the history was that the original goal was 20% of 1990 levels by 2020, and we got to 25. Once you start working in this direction, we've always overachieved the goals. And I think we will again, once we start working in this direction, because people will begin to think about carbon sequestration. But right now, we don't understand where the technology is going. It may be 10 years before we understand where we're going with that. So I think you're right, but I can't predict it and I can't sell it either because I can't predict it. But I do believe you're right. We will be getting some form of sequestration by 2050. But if we could get everyone on the same page for this, then we'd all be moving in the right direction, and then we can begin to go faster. Because it's a big thing. When the petitioners said they want to change the RPP, they actually came in and said as soon as is practical. I hate that language, because as soon as practical means everybody goes back and continues to do what they just were doing. You give them a hard number, then they have to start thinking hard about it. And in particular, when we started thinking hard about it, we said, you can't wait till 2050. That's why we started worrying about the regional high school, which is not net zero and is going up in a couple of years. So once you get these hard numbers, I mean, the way I would do it is I would say that not only are those our goals, but if you're applying for any permit in the town, give us your plan on how you're going to meet those goals. We're not going to tell you you have to be net zero when you build it, but you have to tell us how by 2050 you'll be net zero and you'll be at 50% by 2030 and 75 by 2040. And that's when it occurs to them, maybe I better start out being net zero. So you have to start thinking that way. But I agree with you. I mean, I'm totally sympathetic. It's not the final goal, but we have to get moving fast. And once we do, I think we'll overachieve. I don't know. Does anyone else have any opinion on that?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So when we get to our local comprehensive plan, I'd like to have those specific goals and specific implementations. Like if you come to the planning board for new construction or a major renovation, give us your plan to get to net zero by 2050. So you're putting on an addition. Okay, your addition better be net zero because that's how you will achieve the 2030 for the whole project, the 2030 goal for the whole project. And what are you going to do in the 20 years after that? That's my thoughts. What do you guys think? GB, you're making too much.
Right now, we don't have a convincing plan for how to accomplish that. I'm concerned about how far we can go with getting people to stop using propane and fuel oil in well fleets.
So my approach, Bob, is we're not going to tell them how to do it. We're going to tell them that they have to tell us how they're going to do it and make them come up with a solution. The goal is you're going to get to zero on this schedule. How are you going to do it?
But Dick, I hear what you're saying, but not everybody is going to be an expert in this area, and I think somebody, I don't know if it's necessarily this committee, but somebody should undertake to provide guidance, options, solutions that have worked well, this kind of thing. Cost benefit trade-offs and so on, so that
absolutely right. That
Hmm?
means that when we do our outreach, we have to come up with a solution. You're right. We have to provide alternatives for people who can say, yeah, I can see my way to doing that. Right, don't mute yourself. You agree? But GB,
Is what?
do you agree we have to give them the goals and some hints and let them come back with
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Well, that's the first part is, here are the goals. And this is what people need to be aware of and need to think about and need to understand. And then the options, the alternatives, whatever, um, provide the guidance in terms of how you can best meet those goals.
Right. We can give them suggestions, but we can't tell them.
You know, the thing is that if you start looking at who works for the propane and oil companies on the Cape, what are we going to do about them? You know, that's the problem with why we get them to agree to provide us with the data that we want. Because they're affected, their lives are affected. And I don't know, I don't have a solution for that, but it's a real problem.
Yep.
Well, I think the answer is that there has to be a transition, and we can't orchestrate the transition precisely. I mean, clearly we have to make options available to the extent that we can that are attractive to people. At the end of the day, widespread adoption of any of the things we want to do to decarbonize is not going to happen simply by convincing people that they should do it, or that they have to do it. It's going to happen if it's economically and financially beneficial to them. That is because one of the things I've learned in working on this Cape-wide Energize program is that I've kind of concluded that some really small percentage of the population of the Cape is where we are. We're all in this little climate activist bubble. And we assume all kinds of things because we talk to a lot of the same people. And I'm willing to bet you that maybe well over 90% of the people on the Cape hardly ever even think about climate change, much less look at targets, much less decide to get rid of their relatively new oil burner, et cetera. So the trick is making a massive communication effort on whatever town or Cape-wide scale, but then making it really attractive financially. And that's to do with the Cape Light Compacts program. It's to do with maybe working more effectively with financial institutions to provide the right kind of loans. These are the things that are going to help people to do it in the end.
You're right, David. Let me put one optimistic note in this. We achieved a 25% reduction from 1990 levels by 2020, give or take 2%.
Yep.
But we achieved it. How many people noticed the struggle? The bottom line is we achieved it by changing the RPS standards, the renewable portfolio standards, which was done at ISO New England level. We achieved it by conservation measures, by increasing the building codes to be more and more conservative in the amount, or more and more stringent.
Yeah.
We achieved it by increasing the fleet average of the cars we all drive. So we all drive a new car, or even a car that's 10 years old, but not 30, not the cars that were built 30 years ago. And we managed to make a 25% cut, which I would argue was the hardest part, because getting started, turning the ship, is the thing that's the hardest. But nobody noticed, right? There was no great outcry about the fuel standards. There was no great outcry that our cars are more efficient. There was no outcry that people always complain the price of electricity is too high. But nobody noticed that it was becoming greener and greener as time went on.
Right.
So it can happen, and it doesn't have to be painful, but people do need to be aware of it. And yeah, at some point it may take a gasoline tax to push some people over the edge. All right.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree, Dick. It doesn't have to be painful, but it does have to be done as quickly as we can help it happen. And that requires massive work to get enough people engaged, to get the word out through, you can save all this money, et cetera, et cetera. It's a gigantic job just for little Cape Cod, much less anything else.
Right.
And I think it's doable for sure.
Right.
Can I just add a comment to what David said?
Yeah.
On the communication side of things, I tend to think that communications is not a one-size-fits-all operation. And I think that the younger generation is much more in tune to the climate urgency than the older generation, which leads me to believe that starting the communications effort there will help the communications effort with the senior crowd, because you'll have a larger base of people who are supportive of what you're trying to do and probably willing to help with that communications effort. So I just offer that up in terms of some thought needs to be given to segmentation as far as the communication goes, and efficiency in terms of who you start with first and how you approach it.
Yeah.
First, I don't believe we'll do things first. I think they do everything at once, because you do what you're saying, but you don't wait for that to happen before you do anything else. But I agree, we shouldn't neglect it. And the local high schools actually have some very environmentally conscious people. Surprisingly so, or not surprisingly so, because they're the people who are going to have to live through the worst of this.
Yep.
So one final thought, when we get the local comprehensive plans, I hope we can look at it and try to write it as specific goals. And one of the things that I'm going to spring on the Cape Cod Commission is that they approve local comprehensive plans. They review them and work with them. And I'm going to spring on it that they have to also draft a model section for local comprehensive plans regarding energy, setting goals and giving some outlines, and that be part of the approval process of a local comprehensive plan, that it addresses the mitigation goals over the next 30 years. But we should try to take a cut at it ourselves so we get a sense of what it takes to do it. Right?
Good idea.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so that's a good segue, David. You want to talk about Outer Cape Energize or Cape and
Sure.
Island?
I'll give you, it's a very quick update. I've been working on it a little bit myself, and also in discussion with Bob Higgins Steele and Truro about this next phase of the Outer Cape Energize presentation that we all worked on earlier. And last time I talked to him about it, which was recently, we said, you know what, there's no point in doing anything until after the election, for one thing, because we're not going to, a lot of the people that we want to reach, or some of them anyway, are also involved in election issues. So he and I are going to touch base again mid-November-ish, which is pretty soon, and have another conversation about how to do things like getting the word out and marketing a Zoom-based presentation, discussion, and the like. So that's still hanging out there. I got more work to do on it on my own anyway, but hopefully by, I guess by, when is our November meeting? That would be
Third Monday in November?
okay. So hopefully by the November meeting, I'll have more to say, or I will have sent you something to look at, et cetera, to get this thing going as we go into the end of the year and the beginning of next year.
So you envision the Cape and Outer Cape Energize program?
I envision a a presentation that will move people in the right direction. I think, to me, what I've concluded a while ago is that a lot of what we have to do, which is why it's urgent that we start, is kind of prepare the ground. You can't just go right to do this, the sky is falling or whatever. You have to kind of bring people along. And my idea of this presentation is to bring people along. And therefore, when we get a bigger effort going, they'll be more likely we'll have a much higher adoption rate. So it's an educational function, mainly to explain some of the functions and get people ready. And then the related thing I'm working on, which is at the conference, Dick, that you sent a note around about. I'm doing a presentation let's see, 1:15 on this Friday for that conference about this broader Cape-wide notion, which is really a notion now. It's kind of a set of ideas. It's not done yet by any means. But the idea of that is to figure out when we can actually start concretely to do things. There's some organizing to do always. There's volunteer recruitment always. And then there is, when can you start having old-fashioned community meetings? And when are people going to be comfortable having vendors come to their house? All that stuff. And part of what I'm going to say is the pandemic kind of trumps everything in a lot of ways. So if there's a vaccine widely distributed by, let's say, a year from now or something like that, then that might be when we can really start putting out some of these programs. The idea that we're working on, for example, is to do a Cape-wide reduced price solar program, either through a formal RFP or through a negotiated arrangement with Cape-wide installers, and the same with other categories, electric vehicles, et cetera. So the idea is actually a massive organization, which may be, to be honest, impossible or a pipe dream. But the idea is to say, can we do a version of the prior version of Outer Cape Energize across the entire Cape and the Vineyard, by the way, and go farther, push harder on electric vehicles, do more with air source technologies, add in storage. So if you're interested in this entire scheme, you can listen to it on the Friday at 1:15, and I'll be happy to actually send out my slides to all of you as well later if you want to see those.
So actually, I first heard about this because you asked Cape Light
Dave.
Company for some money.
Right.
I think we're going to talk about it at our next meeting.
No, correct. And the thing that we're struggling with right now, Dick, in terms of Cape Light Compact, we have the likelihood, hopefully there'll be some funding from the compact, but even leaving that out, the likelihood is that substantive staff time from the compact is not going to be available until 2022. Because the coming year, 2021, we just learned this from Maggie a few days ago, is completely filled up with a whole, I believe is it a 3 or 5 year planning process of some sort?
Yeah, there's a region up. There is an energy plan that's a 3-year plan.
So Maggie was ready to go sooner, but then her staff said to her, wait a second, we don't have the bandwidth to do anything until a year from January, let's say. So that's kind of changing the time frame a little. We're trying to decide, can we get going without the compact in some education ways, or maybe some kind of solar program. But the compact was ready to do a formal RFP, pay for, if they get the funding, pay for the review of proposals, bring together all their capabilities and skills about marketing and PR, a whole bunch of things. But now it's put off a year longer than we thought, which I accept. We have to just figure out, can we go ahead anyway?
Mhm.
David, what,
David, do you have any idea what percentage of the houses are suitable for solarization?
I don't.
David, what was the RFP for solar?
Well, the compact was considering, it's all just an idea right now, doing an RFP for solar. I was also pushing, and I understand fully how much harder it is for reduced pricing on air source technologies as well. That's one of the ways, with the right kind of incentives and rebates, that we could begin to get rid of oil burners all up and down the Cape if we can make it attractive enough to change over. So
David,
what the compact can do is still up in the air.
in respect to that, how many people are willing to accept the mini splits as a complete substitute for propane or fuel oil? 'Cause
I don't
you
know.
have some
the answer to
experience in that?
I believe that I believe they are a complete substitute, first of all. There's tons of evidence for that. And the trick is convincing people to understand the technology, and again, more than anything else, saving them money.
Right. Bob, let's say you don't accept it. Say you think that you really want to keep that oil burner as a backup, even if you mostly use it.
I seem to be losing my power.
Yeah.
Earlier.
Very dark.
But
Yeah, everything went dark, but the computer's still on. That's weird.
Yeah.
so,
Running on battery.
Yeah.
Bob, suppose you're right. Suppose that today, with today's technology, today's cost structure, you only want to do 70% of your house with air source heat pumps, and you want to keep the furnace around for a backup or to do some small percentage. That still cuts down on the carbon footprint. And in 10 years, the technology will change enough so your outlook will change. And in 20 years, it'll change some more. So if our goal is to get there by starting to move, then that's the approach. We don't have to hit 100% right now. Technology does evolve over the next 30 years, and the cost environment evolves over the next 30 years. So we just need to make a good start, right?
Right. No, I agree. I think we need to make a good start. And I also believe that if we can achieve sufficient scale in this effort, we can drive prices down, number one. And number two, it'll become a self-fulfilling process, because enough people, there'll be a critical, like a tipping point somewhere where the savings happen first to push people into it. And then people realize the maintenance costs are lower, the operating costs are lower, their utility bills are lower, and they got a rebate on the front end, and they're telling everybody about it. It's a little bit like the air source, mostly for HVAC, that people are doing. The installers that I've talked to who put those in are, some of them, almost all of them used to do other things. A number of them only do air source now because of the demand. I'm sure people are still putting in oil burners and the like, for sure, but there's a great deal of demand, and that's so that some of the air source technologies already hit that, but what we haven't done yet is gotten it to hot water and whole house HVAC.
Well, air source hot water pumps are around.
Right, but I mean, it hasn't really taken off like some of the heat pump technologies to cool your house have.
Well, I think that, yeah, I guess so. But when your hot water heater goes, it makes more sense to put in an air source hot water heater, and they go every 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. It for sure does. I've told a million people about that. It's absolutely true. Anyway,
well,
that's my update.
The term you were looking for is a virtuous
Well, that's an
cycle.
exciting picture.
It's like a vicious cycle, only the other way, a virtuous cycle.
Virtuous cycle. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yep. And I think the trick is to be realistic about this stuff and concerned, but also personally, what I always need is some kind of hopefulness as well. Even if it's slightly misguided hopefulness, you have to have some positive way of thinking about this. Otherwise, it's just too discouraging.
Right.
That's what we all need.
Well-
Could I just go back to something? I think Robert said it earlier about the, the propane dealers and the oil dealers and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And I had a starting capacitor go on my air conditioning condenser earlier this summer, and the fellow that actually put the unit in the first place a number of years ago came out and fixed it rather quickly. But I asked him while he was there, I said, now, do you get involved with air source heat pumps? And he said, no, I don't do that. And it kind of surprised me because I said, gee, that's going to be kind of tough for somebody in this business as time goes by, because just like, the oil people and the propane people and so forth, there's going to be less and less demand. And it really got me thinking, how do you handle something like that? Because, you're talking about people's livelihood, and some people, may not necessarily want to change for new technology and so on, but it'd be great to figure out a way to, get them involved in the whole mission and be an advocate rather than a potential, barrier down the road.
Well, what the challenge is, as this is true of any technological innovation, is to address those issues and those livelihoods directly, I believe. And that means everything from electrical town inspectors, but for sure the individual trades, and provide education and data, and there's things that the Cape Cod Commission can do and the state can do. I think maybe the county, to begin to help people transition. There's going to be more than enough work for those guys.
So
And
David,
some of them already have a lot of the skills.
let's pick on GB's ideas. We had a very popular session for local tradespeople on the new electrical code. Is there a
Right.
way we can run an educational session for the people who are doing HVAC but not air source heat pumps, to educate them about that and the business opportunities?
Yep.
So they can think about it.
Well, yeah, and I have a feeling what they would discover, I don't know for sure about how their businesses work, is that these air source systems of whatever sort are so much easier to install. The maintenance is so much lower that they could put in many more systems compared to the traditional oil burner with ducts all over your house and everything. So yeah, I think there's education, but there's also, maybe we'd have to have people who have already made the transition, who are HVAC business people, and they say, yeah, I went through this 2 years ago, here's how it's worked out. That would probably be the most valuable thing.
So somehow we've got to figure out a way to, quote, train people, or at least alert them to, or find out where they can get training and what it takes to work with that segment of the contractor market.
Well, and I'm convinced that we could find existing contractors who would speak positively about air source technologies, because I know there are at least some number of them, I don't know how many, that's pretty much all they're doing now.
Right. Yeah, I remember when we ran our fair a couple of years ago, the one completely local person who was putting them in didn't have enough time to come down and pitch their wares, even though he could have signed up 5 more customers on the spot because they were too busy. Remember, Lily?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, he wanted to, but he was just too busy. Even having some information about costs too, David, that would really help as well. And
yeah, I think we have to put together a case. We have to make a case, a business case that is applicable to both the installers and the homeowners, both, to say, this is why this is a good thing to do with numbers.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Wonder if there's a
I am
state
out
aid-
of time, guys. I'm sorry. I only had an hour tonight.
Oh, okay.
GB, you vote next.
Okay, GB, you can be me in whatever way you want.
You know, there's another
Uh,
side to this, which has to do
See you
with
next time, David.
electricity.
Take care.
I'll hear you.
Bob?
You know, all of this stuff requires electricity, and the electricity has to be produced, you know, without creating greenhouse gases.
Right.
And we have a problem with the solution to that, because depending upon Eversource as a good way of solving this problem, doesn't really work out. So somehow or other, all of this stuff has to be coordinated with a better solution to electric supply than the one that we have through Eversource. I don't know what the answer to that is, but
Well, let me talk about
it's-
that. Al Gore announced as part of his program that he wanted to be completely renewable energy by 2035, and he published a plan. And I looked into it a little bit, and it's realistic. What it takes, so the current plan is we're not going to be 100, we're going to be 80% electric by 2050, and that's got to go up to zero. The current law, there are subsidies, there are requirements called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. And right now, as best as I can determine, we're about 25% renewable on the Cape overall. And that's because there's an RPS standard, but then there's more that you have to do on the Green Energy Act. I didn't want to take a lot of Austin Brand's time, but he told me it's 20 to 25% now. The current standard goes up by 2% a year for the next 10 years. So it's 20% more by 2030. And that's now we're at 45 or 50% renewable. And I think that it'll go higher. But Al Gore announced a plan, Biden announced a plan that was by 2035 would be 100% renewable, and it's ambitious. But I looked at the components that go into it. And the components that go into it involve moving energy between regions. And if you have a huge infrastructure program that can move energy between regions, then there's no reason why we can't be 100% renewable by the time the infrastructure is completed. Because there's enough wind in the Great Plains and enough sun in the Southwest to double and triple the total electricity we're using today. I keep going back to that real contract that the city of Los Angeles put out to build a solar farm that produces 7% of the electricity used by the entire city of Los Angeles. And the significant thing was their cost was 2 cents a kilowatt hour during the day, and with battery backup, 1.5 cents at night. 1.3 cents at night, because they were limited by transmission lines. That means for less than 3 cents, you can produce electricity from solar all day long. Now, the Mojave Desert's conveniently close to Los Angeles, but it's not impossible to get that electricity across the country. Somebody was proposing to build a solar farm in Australia to supply Singapore. And he was going to have to build a 2,000-mile undersea cable to bring the electricity to Singapore. These are real plans. It's not here today, but it's likely to be here in 2030, 2035, especially if we put our minds to it. So I'm very optimistic.
What about the offshore power generation
I mean,
that's
wind,
being proposed?
offshore wind, that's
Yeah.
part of it. It's doing very well. And the cost will be going down as the infrastructure gets built, and now all you have to do is tack on more supply, which gets to be cheaper as time goes on. I think that around here, offshore wind is likely to be a big factor. I'm just optimistic, Bob. And, you have to take into account where technology is going. So there are some things that I think we don't have to do at the local level, and that's one of them. I think all of our electricity will be green, if not by 2035, but certainly by 2050. And it means moving it across the country, moving it around. I know the biggest factor, limiting factor in the electricity that's being generated in Texas is the grid, getting it out of the grid. And they spend half their effort figuring out whether to sell in the day ahead market or the day market because they have to worry about transmission capability. But with batteries, that will not be a factor. You can just store it and use it when you need it.
Dick, I have to get off. Is there something else in the agenda that's going to be relevant to what I'm doing?
Yeah, okay. We just lost your sound. Did you want to say?
No, I think he was asking a question of, is there something else on the agenda that's relative to what he's doing?
I don't know. You've looked at the agenda. Do you have the agenda in front of you?
The Global Covenant of Mayors Status and Actions is the 11th item. Can we go there so that Robert can talk about that?
Read the item. I didn't number them.
No, but I do, so I can do the notes. But it's,
Okay.
Toward the end,
it's way down on the agenda. Can we go to that?
Read the item.
Global Covenant of Mayors Status and Actions.
Right. Okay. Yes. You want to talk to that, Bob?
So I've made a submission for this year. I have until December to put in any updates that we get in respect to the carbon inventory, but we're in a good shape there, and I'm going to expect some feedback from CDP and the Global Covenant, which I'll respond to. So that situation, I think, is pretty much okay at this point.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk to?
No. I was very happy to see what the Cape Cod Commission is trying to do. I think that there's a lot of work left for them to put this whole thing together, but the idea of unifying, all of Barnstable County in this effort is valuable. But there are things that still remain important from a local point of view. I'm done. Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to talk to?
No, thank you. No.
Okay. Have a nice evening.
Night.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to Suzanne then. What's happening on the grant front?
Okay, so I believe where we left off from last month was that the Cape Cod Commission didn't get that MPV grant, and so they're looking for another way to get those matching funds to match the EDA grant. And this is for vulnerable road, low-lying road vulnerabilities. So there's been no development there from Cape Cod Commission. I spoke with Heather, and they've been very busy with these sessions that they've been doing with the towns. So since that time, Dick, you had sent us an announcement from MEMA about the BRIC statement of interest, and BRIC is the buildings, okay, let me see, Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant. So we thought, Carol and I, that we could maybe look into that grant as a ways to address a low-lying road vulnerability possibilities. So we arranged to meet with Maria Broadbent and the DPW and Hillary Lemos to see what could be done to make that October 16th deadline, to see if there was any way of getting a project out of that. And as it turns out, we were hoping for the low-lying roads vulnerability possibility, because we're going to be looking at that all year long. There's quite a few roads there. But after discussion, it was decided that we will be working on getting a generator for the COA, with the idea of making the COA an evacuation site in the event of a emergency. So so DPW gave their blessings on that. Carol and I will be working on the grant if MEMA BRIC sees that as a viable project. So that's one report. So we may be doing that as an upcoming project. The next thing is that we want to, we've arranged a meeting. We just have to arrange the date, but we've agreed with Maria Broadbent that we want to talk further about the whole low-lying roads vulnerability issue. Again, because there's a number of roads around town. And one of the reasons why, I'll backtrack a little bit, one of the reasons why that kind of project wasn't going to work with BRIC was in part because it's not grant ready yet. There's just no information on budgets and what needs to be done exactly and all that type of thing. So really moving ahead, we want to talk with Maria and DPW and figure out maybe a year in advance, a year or two in advance, what roads are priorities, what grants to go after for them, and start working now to prepare ourselves for all of them. So this is like the big picture on low-lying road vulnerabilities. So where we stand is that we're going to talk to the town and try to organize that with them so that there's just a cohesive idea that everybody's on the same page about that moving ahead. Because I don't know that Carol can correct me, but I don't think anybody's really been, it's been written down as a concern, these low-lying roads, but I don't think the projects have been formulated or handed off to any departments or anything like that. So we're going to try to get that going.
Okay.
And that's it for that.
So I had a question, just so that I get this right for the minutes, Suzanne.
Sure.
So it was the MVP grant that that the Cape Cod Commission didn't Yeah, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then I just wanted to get this correct. Then with the BRIC grant, you had a meeting with the TA, Hillary and the DPW, or did you not have the meeting?
We did have a meeting with them.
Okay, all right, and that was, and then you have a future meeting with the TA and the DPW to talk about low-lying roads and,
Right, because what happened was
yeah, no,
because,
that's all, I just wanted to clarify
okay,
all that.
sure.
Okay, I got it. I just wanted to make absolutely certain for the minutes. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, Rebecca, can you enable screen sharing, by the way?
Sure, hang on one second. All right, you're all set. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me get back. So what happened to my ability to share a screen? My little button disappeared now that I can do it. The bar disappeared. I can't request screen sharing because there's no.
If you
bar.
just move your mouse, it should let the bar come up at the bottom and the green share button will come up.
Yes, it was right until you did what you did. It isn't coming up anymore. I don't have the participants thing and I don't have the chat thing. And I don't have the screen sharing request anymore. Oh, well.
Everybody should have that.
Oh, it just came back. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Okay, so this is the agenda, right? Possible actions with any committees. I don't think anything has happened on that. Do you? Does anyone else know? I don't.
With other energy committees.
Right, or other committees. They did appear at the Cape, out of Cape. No, they didn't even come to the session that the Cape Cod Commission did because they didn't get the notice on time. Okay, let's go on to the next one, the landfill. I have a question for you, Lily. You contacted the land court, am I correct, to find out about the status? Some time ago?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time actually making some phone calls, and I actually was able to speak with someone about that directly. Now, when I got back to Danport, it sounded like that the issue that you had told us about didn't seem to be the issue, but
What is the issue?
well, you said everything was already decided and that you just needed the stamp. You needed the stamp in Barnstable County to say that it was all okay to proceed.
What
So,
do you think the issue is?
well, I don't know, because he said that wasn't the issue. He didn't tell me what it was, but he said the attorneys are still saying that you can't go forward. Well, you know, according to what information I received, that attorneys can make appointments to go and get papers stamped and signatures, you know, signed off on. You know, if decisions have already been made, they can get the formal paperwork and move forward. So I don't know exactly where it stands, Dick, because I was told that thank you for your effort, but this isn't the issue. And the attorneys are telling us we can't move forward. So,
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen is asking a question, and obviously you know more than I do. And they want to put it on the agenda for their next meeting. So we told them, and I got a call from DPW head, what's his name, Dave? Because they were
Mark Vincent.
Mark Vincent.
Mark Vincent. They asked him, he asked me. I told him what I knew, which may not be right, but I said, call the attorneys. So look, It's going to be on the agenda. Let's get up there and tell them what we know and what we think and what we don't know and thought were wrong, and get the attorneys to explain it. Okay? Because I don't know what it takes to get this moving again.
Didn't you say that it already was heard and decided on, and that, all it needed was the approval?
No, I was just told it was not controversial and it would go through without any hearings. It was just a matter of paperwork.
Okay.
That's what I was told, but maybe that gets lost in translation. And you're hearing it from me, and I heard it from someone else who heard it from someone else. Let's hear it from the attorneys. All
Okay.
right?
Again, too, I had, my understanding from you was that it had been heard, so.
No, I never said there was a hearing. So in any event,
Well,
did you get an explanation at all, or can you call, or can you want me? I'll call whoever it was you spoke to and get him to explain the issue.
no, I think the attorney needs to say where it's at. I mean,
I would think so too, but I think that if the attorneys were doing their job, we would have heard by now. So I think we need some independent input into this. We're going to hear from the attorneys, but we need someone to, I don't trust them. Because why are we still here if it was possible to get it done? And nobody seems to understand what the obstacles are and what the plan is to get done.
right. I think that's why the attorney should explain it once, so that, we hear it, they hear it, and we know what the obstacles are.
Yeah, maybe you could send me the name and contact information for the person who said that wasn't the problem, and maybe he can explain to me what the problem is.
No, I didn't say that. I said that, well, I did say Dan Hort was I tried to follow up using the information that you told us at that meeting. And I went through Barnstable County as the assembly delegate to try to follow up on this. And I was told that there shouldn't be any problem for the attorneys to follow through on it. But then when I brought it back to Dan Hort, Dan is the one that said that wasn't the issue. And
Okay. So, do you have a contact at the land court?
oh man, I'm sure I have all that in a file, Dick, but I think
Try to look it out rather than like,
from the attorney where it's at and what the obstacles are,
the problem is,
and if at that point, I can clarify anything through my position as assembly delegate and talking to people at the county, I'll be glad to do it. But we need to know where the attorneys think it's at, what stage it's at, and
I hear you. We need to hear them say that, but we also need some independent verification if they're not blowing smoke.
well, I will. I'll go back to my files and I'll get in touch with you
Right.
about what I found out.
Okay, thank you. I really think we need an independent, somebody from the land court to say, yeah, that's right. Or from their viewpoint, explain what needs to be done. Because what have these guys been doing for the last 9 months? Since December 16th, when they submitted it. They were supposed to submit it in October, but they got it in September 16th, and they claimed they were, quote, working on it. And then we got a note from Dan, well, they actually filed it in the middle of December, which was a month after they told us they had filed it. So
we'll just see where it's at and what needs to be done, and if it can be done, given the status of it.
yes. Um, okay, so I think we've done most of the items on the agenda.
You know, you skipped the discussion of the Nassau Regional School. Is there anything?
Nothing much has happened. I'm still sending out, not doing much, just trying to drum up support with other regional committees. I haven't heard back from them. I guess I should send them another note. I will, saying it's not acceptable that you told us you looked at conservation and you haven't looked at ground source heat pumps. I'll take that action to light a fire under them again. The new pending state legislation, I think we've talked about, that has fixed hard limits in it. So I think we've covered that. Are there any future items anyone wants to talk about that we haven't reviewed so far? Carol, you're going to send out the thing on the local comprehensive plan. I would like people to think about what they'd like to see in a local comprehensive plan, given the fact that it's been a couple of years since we last gave it any thought. All right, and then I'll put that on the agenda for next time, that we can talk about what we ought to have in our local comprehensive plan. Is that agreeable with everyone?
Yep.
Sounds good.
GB, you and I need to get together. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
I have been trying to figure out about this business about a combined bill and whether it helps us or hurt us. So I'd like to go through this with everyone. When the array generates electricity, it goes through a meter that Ameresco supplies, and then it goes to another meter that Eversource supplies. And those two meters are supposed to agree. Once a year, Ameresco sends us a reconciliation so we can see if Eversource is cheating us or not. So that's one of the things we're going to need to do. But it's once a year, and there's a little bit of loss. Ameresco's measurement should be about 1% higher than Eversource's because there's some equipment it goes through in the interim. But after Eversource makes a measure, they credit the town accounts. Now, GB is telling us that they want to credit each account individually. So we send them something called a Schedule Z. This is if we can't credit it to the overall account. We send them a Schedule Z, which says 10% on this account and 10% on that account, and so on, until we've allocated all of the usage. And presumably they credit each account, and then they send the town a bill for the electricity we've used, presumably less the credits that they've taken on that bill. So when the
but Dick, just one thing on that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the credits that were generated in a particular month will, correspond with a specific Eversource bill. In other words, they might not necessarily be in sync.
Well, they're not in sync. First of all, they're a month apart. The credits represent last month or even the month before.
Right.
And the usage goes up and down. So if we turn off a building for the summer, say, or the winter, we're still generating credits against it. But let's assume that we exclude all those buildings that don't generate, that are, that go off for the season. Presumably, we get a net bill, which is the electricity used less the credits that have been allocated. And then the town accountant pays the bill. All right. So when she pays all the bills, she should cover all the things with the allocation. So the only thing that can go wrong with this is the town accountant really doesn't have to do any allocation, but she just pays the whole bill. And then that total amount should equal all the sub bills, which is the energy used less the credits, right? Right now, the town accountant pays each bill individually, but if we combine them, he or she would pay one bill. But it would be the same thing. It would be the sum of all the individual bills, which would be the energy used less any credits from the previous month. As I understand this process, and this could be totally wrong. That's why I'm trying to explain it, talk it through. So what can go wrong? If the credits exceed the bill, then the credits roll over to the next month, but it means that we haven't used all the credits, and hopefully in the next month we catch up. The only time we wouldn't catch up is if we close down a building for the season, whether it's the summer or the winter, right? We might have to wait 3 to 5 months before we can use the credits. But the good news is the credit is only 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and the cost is 18 cents a kilowatt hour. So the credits can be 2.5 times, off by a factor of 2, and we'll still be able to use it all. All right? So that's a change from the old SREC system where the credits pretty much matched the bill.
Why is that good news? It sounds like we're not getting
Well,
credit.
if we had gotten, yeah, under the old SREC 2, we'd have a lot. It's good news in this process. It was a pain in the ass to do it under SREC 2, but it was worth more to you. All right, we're only getting 8 cents, not 18 cents, but
That doesn't sound like good news to me.
yeah, but we signed the contract a long time ago because the SMART program had already started before we did this. Also, besides the 8 cents, we're getting a lease payment and a payment in lieu of taxes when it comes on. So this is only 1/3 of the reimbursement that we get.
Okay.
2/3 of it is in the ground lease, and then there's more money involved, in other words.
Good.
The other thing is that at the end of the year, the usage for the whole town shouldn't exceed the total produced by the array. But the bottom line is nobody has any way of figuring that out. Us. I mean, we'd have to go out of our way and do it all by hand in a spreadsheet. Eversource doesn't have the software to do it, and they've got 150 towns and they don't even bother. Okay, so no one reconciles it because you don't know which 12-month window is supposed to be reconciling. That isn't in the law. Okay, so you can always find another 12-month window and say, use this one. Okay, so there's no way to figure it out. So we're pretty much home free. But we have to talk to the finance committee to see, does the town want us to apply credits to the enterprise fund or not? That is, given the fact that we have some leeway, it's how the town wants to handle the town's accounting as to whether they want to apply any credits to enterprise funds. All right? That's an accounting at the town level that we need to talk to the town accountant and to the finance committee. I would say the finance committee, because they set policy, whereas the town accountant just executes that policy. But we have to talk to him too. So
Didn't I read that the town accountant got fired?
yes, we have a new town accountant. Did you get my email, GB?
Yeah, I went to the Independent and I found the article there, and then I got your email. But has the new accountant been identified? Because
They hired someone who's working in Eastham. I think he's part-time.
No, I think I think I saw something that said that a woman who's the E-stamp person is helping out Wellfleet on a temporary basis.
Right, yes, that's,
But I went to the Wellfleet website and under the town accountant, it says position vacant or
right,
vacant position, I guess.
right. So, come up with what is your position for the best of our knowledge, and then we'll go discuss it with whoever gets the job. And if it's a coherent position, they'll probably agree to it because they'll have other things to worry about. Right. In other words, if you outlast them, you win. Not that, not that we're trying. We are trying to do the best for the town to make it as easy as possible for the town accountant. But we were fighting, it's not the way we used to do it. So now that won't be the objection anymore. I think that a combined bill is less work for the accountant in every way possible, as near as I can tell, right? They have one bill to pay and Eversource distributes the money instead of 17. And the distribution of which account you credit is done based on that Schedule Z, and we can plan to do it annually unless we discover we're quite out of whack, right? And the Schedule Z is something we can do and just have the town submit. Right?
Yeah, I think from what I understand, you can submit, a different Schedule Z.
Quarterly.
I thought it was
Quarterly or
monthly.
semi-annual, you can do.
I thought it was monthly, but anyway,
No.
you can put something in that overrides what you have now.
Right. Yeah, you can, but it's either quarterly or semi-annual, but we want to do it on an annual basis if it's not critical, just to make less work. Because we're going to be doing it probably, filling out all the paperwork. So that's what I came up with, and I've been thinking about it aloud. Now you can see what I've been thinking. I'll send you this in the mail. You don't see, did you think of anything else about what we need to do?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing we have to do is, well, I think you said it earlier, is when that permanent person has been identified, we gotta get in front of him or her right away and say, we really need to get a decision on this matter. I mean, I sent a Chatham statement bill over to Mark Vincent,
Mhm.
I don't know, weeks ago, and haven't heard a thing. So I just think it'd be great if we could get somebody on the finance side. I don't know if that's something that ought to be discussed with the finance committee in the interim as another possibility.
Well,
I
no,
don't-
no, the Schedule Z that's a policy thing. For the
No,
fine,
well, no. I'm not talking about the Schedule Z. I'm talking about making the decision to go ahead with statement billing.
no, that would be Mark Vincent and the town accountant because they do the work. And we're
All right.
presumably trying to help them in that.
Okay. All right.
The other thing with the finance committee is who gets the credits, for the on-bill credits. How do they want to handle enterprise accounts? Because enterprise accounts are supposed to stand on their own. So this is in a sense a town subsidy to an enterprise account. And so it's okay to subsidize an enterprise account, but it's a policy decision that the finance committee should take the first cut at what policy they want to have. So that's the only, I don't have any opinion one way or the other about whether we're supposed to subsidize enterprise accounts. I just know it's a policy decision. And, you know, it's so far down that nobody would ever notice it. And it's not that much money. It's about $20,000 a year total. So the enterprise funds would only be getting a few $1,000s. But in general, we want to do it right. Okay, I'll send you this thing. You can think about it. This chart. It just helps me to think about these things. Okay, is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Dick, I have a question from last meeting. You had mentioned that you were going to draft a letter for the conference committee. Did that go out? Did you do that?
The conference committee. No, I didn't. No,
Okay.
it was a letter to in support of the bill.
Maybe. I'm not sure. I was looking over the minutes and I saw that and I think it pertained to that. The letter of support.
Letter of support. Okay. They have a number of major issues on their plate, and it looks like they're going to put it off until after the election,
Oh,
which seems to bother making decisions. They've extended their session till the end of the year, but I don't think they're going to drop the energy bill. They're just having trouble coming to a conclusion. You know, of the two plans, one from the House and one from the Senate, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care which one they pass. And they both have the same goals for greenhouse gas mitigation. So I guess I could support the whole concept, but
yeah.
I'm sorry, I dropped the ball on that.
You were going to post it as a question.
Pose it as a question for what?
So the consensus of the committee is that Elkin send a letter to the conference committee on behalf of the Energy and Climate Action Committee that is posed as a question. Elkin will email committee members a draft of the letter in the next several days.
Oh, okay. I'll read it more carefully and see if I can come up with something if we still want to do it. Okay. Do we still want to send them something in support? Okay. I will, I'll take a cut at it. Anything else?
The committee liaisons, is there any information about that?
Well, let's see. Who on the call is a liaison with another committee?
I
I
am.
am.
Okay.
Sorry.
Who hasn't spoken? Chuck, you're first.
I haven't. We're going to start having meetings with the Wellfleet Shellfishermen's Association, which I should be able to get information on the other Shellfish Advisory Committee. Thursday night, Ryan Curley's going to have a meeting. So we've they haven't been Zoom meeting. I think maybe the Shellfish Advisory has, but I should be able to get more information on them. And I'll put in the 2 cents for our interest in climate change concerns that they might still have going into the fall this year.
Okay. Who else was a liaison wanted to report?
I'm liaison to the recycling committee,
Mhm.
and I have mostly been attending their meetings and they're doing good stuff, but I don't think of anything specific to report back.
Okay. You might give them a challenge. What percentage of a carbon footprint is affected by recycling? It's not just greenhouse gases, of course. Recycling has other effects, but might ask them.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Lily, do you have any?
Yeah, I'm a liaison to the county, and I guess I've already reported on what's been going on at the Cape Cod Commission. Yeah, the other thing is, I did have a conversation with the county administrator about solar projects. And we had an interesting conversation about potential solar projects county-wide on buying in bulk, that kind of thing, and doing an RFP for a lot of different locations like canopies, solar canopies, and where the various towns could opt in. So I am continuing that kind of conversation as well.
Mhm. So is our largest available place for solar for the town government is solar canopies at the town beach parking lots
Yeah. Um,
for us.
yeah. There are other locations, of course, but yes, I mean, so, I mean, when they get ready to do those kinds of, moving forward with an RFP, I mean, that's something that I'm sure he'll let the assembly know, and me personally as well, because he knows that I have an interest in that. So if they get ready to do something like that, yeah, I'll come back and report to the committee about that.
Okay, there is one other thing. We seem to be learning about grants right before the deadline expires.
Yes.
Is there anything we can
Dick,
do
that
about
was my, oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead.
That was actually the point I was trying to make before about coming meeting with Maria Broadbent and the DPW to really, plan projects and have them grant ready before we even go after a grant funder. So really to have projects in place, and the only thing that's missing is the money. And then that way you can apply at, I wouldn't say your leisure, but just it's you're more prepared to find the most appropriate and most likely grant money.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
so
that's
one approach is more notice, and the second approach, which is more important, you're saying, is to be prepared beforehand.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and Carol and I have been discussing that, and little by, I mean, it's a real learning process for us to be doing, these government grants and everything. So, just moving ahead, I think that the chances of getting those grants will be a lot better as we really just put together projects, identify projects well in advance and have them ready.
Okay,
That way, all you have to do at the time is apply to the right grantor.
okay. So do you have is there anything you need from any of us?
Nothing I can think of, Carol. I mean, I do believe after this talk we'll know better. We thought we might be looking at these vulnerable low-lying road projects
Mhm.
for just take a year or two. There's quite a few of them. I don't think they can be all done at once under one grant. And so we were just going to focus on that piece by piece. We might hear otherwise from the town that that's not the way they're thinking of going in terms of grant priorities or whatever. So that's what that meeting is going to be about.
Okay, is it a meeting that Mark Vincent should be at too?
Yes.
Okay, so either you do it yourselves or let me know if you need me there, but I don't know that you do. I don't need to be there.
Well, we can see how it goes. It should be occurring in the next couple of weeks. We're
Okay.
working it out with Maria, and we should have something to say by next meeting.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up?
Yes, they're under old business.
Okay,
Yeah, this is not an easy thing for me to bring up, but I think it needs to be said. We all received an email from Dick on Tuesday, October 13th, and it was talking about the Cape Cod Commission listening sessions. And one of the statements was, let's coordinate our position. We need advocates for a serious plan with numerical targets, not the happy horse expletive that the commission usually puts out, and the expletive was spelled out. There are two, and then you ask for people to call you, give me a ring. And I mean, you know, Dick, that this was a clear violation of open meeting law
only if someone actually called me.
outside of the meeting. And I think, you know, and I take that seriously, even if you don't, that this was, I mean, we should not be meeting outside of outside of this meeting. The other thing is for you to say what you said about the commission, I think was not only highly inappropriate, but it was highly offensive as well. And you being the Cape Cod Commission representative from the town of Wellfleet, I think it is, on top of that, I think it's egregious that you sent out an email like that. So I needed to say that at this
All
meeting.
right. Well, I'm sorry it offended you. I think that they are less than. I'm disappointed in their behavior, and they don't change their slides every time they get feedback. But it's not a violation of the open meeting law unless it's because the Cape Cod Commission posted the meeting and we are attending that meeting. It's not a committee.
You
It's
can't,
not, it's not any committee position. It's a Cape Cod Commission position and meeting. And they posted it.
Dick, you're asking, I mean, if we bring this up in this meeting and we talk about something for a future meeting, that's one thing. That's totally legitimate. But for you to meet with the Energy Committee outside of the Energy Committee on a one-on-one basis, that is a clear violation of open meeting law. You can't do that.
Which meeting? It wasn't an Energy Committee meeting. It was a Cape Cod Commission meeting.
A majority of the Energy Committee members.
No, it wasn't the majority of the Cape Cod Commission because it's their meeting.
But you can't, no, that is not correct. Well, I guess it makes me feel better that you feel confused about it. And I think that,
Okay. Two things. One, nobody called me. So the meeting, to talk about this?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We had one-on-one conversations. I still think one-on-one conversations is not a pseudo conversation.
Right. I don't see that as a violation.
yes,
We
it
can
is.
talk about committee business pairwise. That's why I said call me.
You can't-
Lily,
That's a serial, you know, it's, you can't do that, Dick.
I
That's,
think you can.
no,
I believe that we can have one-on-one conversations
okay, well,
as
let's,
long as I'm not say, so-and-so said this, you go call them, and they call them, they call them.
You can have one-on-one conversations. You cannot deliberate on anything or take motions or votes.
Right. We didn't deliberate on any business coming before the committee. We didn't take any votes. We said I wanted to make sure people came to this other committee's open meeting.
but what you said, let's coordinate our position. You said it right in the,
Yes. So
exactly what you,
our position is not before this committee, it's before the Cape Cod Commission.
But this is but you wanted to coordinate our position as our commission, our position, the Energy and Climate Action Committee's position outside of our actual meeting that we're having.
And
Like,
not at a subject to be discussed at our actual meeting. A subject to be discussed at some other committee's meeting. Because it's not on our agenda, whatever it was we were going to coordinate.
we should discuss it. I mean, in other words, if we discuss in this meeting tonight our position that we had as an energy committee on another meeting we were going to attend, and that was on the agenda, that would be perfectly legitimate. But
Right.
for you to discuss with each one of us what you think the position of the energy committee is.
Not what my intention in doing was, Lily. My intention in doing was that I wanted to have some people talk about mitigation and some people talk about adaptation. And I wasn't prepared to tell them what to say. I just wanted them to bring up enough diverse topics. And besides which, we were discussing the business of another committee, not the business of this committee.
No,
Discussing what we should talk in another committee, and therefore it's not, we didn't have a quorum of that committee.
no, it's not true, Dick. Well, I just wanted to
Don't get all the advice you like about that.
call the attorney of the day at the at the Attorney General's office, and I will bring this up and I will ask, since
Okay, fine,
I generally think that this is okay to do. I will do that.
right. That if we are as individuals appearing before another committee, we can discuss what we want to say before another committee. Because it's not an action of this committee.
Yes, you were. You were promoting an action of this committee. So
No, I wasn't. No, my feeling is I was promoting individuals to express opinions on their expertise, and I wanted to make sure that all of our interests are represented. That's really what I wanted. I wanted
interest of the committee, of what we've been discussing here, and these committee meetings to be brought up at the Cape Cod Commission meeting. That's what you wanted. And you
some
were
of it, yes.
about that.
Some
Yes.
of it- Okay, in any event, Lily, I think you're over.
Okay. And we did want to make sure that we have the date for the next meeting. It's November 16th is the third.
Monday?
Yes, of the month.
Right. Okay, is there anything else anyone wants to bring up? Okay, on that same note, there are special interest groups for the Cape Cod Commission. Has anybody gotten any information about those meetings from the Cape Cod Commission? Did any of you sign up as being interested in being stakeholders in any of it?
I did.
Okay, and did you get information about it?
No.
Okay, so my feedback is they're not really advertising them very well, because as a committee, we didn't find that out about these meetings either. We only found out about them from our roles in in other positions.
But Dick, I may be not seeing it in one of my emails. So, I mean, it may be going into my junk or something like that.
Well, that's why I wanted to know if anyone else got it. I didn't even, I searched for it. I didn't get it. What they did is they sent it out to the town administrators, hoping the town administrators would involve the people they thought, and they, for the most part, sent their deputy town administrator across, and occasionally someone from Public Works. And only in a few towns did the energy committees do anything about it, hear about it. Okay, anything else that anyone would like to bring up? Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second,
We'll let GB do it. He gets so rarely gets a chance to vote. Okay, so that's all in favor. Carol,
I,
Dick, yes. GB, yes. Lily, yes. Suzanne
Yes.
and Chuck.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. See you guys on 16th of November.
Thank you.
Okay.
you.
Bye.